Welcome to this employer Q&A. Thanks so much for meeting with me this morning. So just would like to introduce Simon from the West Norfolk Swimming Club. He is chair at the swimming club, and we're just going to talk a little bit about your organisation and what it is that you do. So if you could just start off by telling me a little bit about what your organisation does, that would be great.
Yeah, so West Norfolk Swimming Club is a competitive club in, you won't be surprised to hear, the west of the county. We're based primarily in Kings Lynn. We've got pools that we're using down in Market and at Hunstanton as well. We've got something around about 175 registered competitive swimming members, ranging in age from sort of 7 years up to late 50s. We provide a training program of weekly sessions for the various swimmers put into those various squads. We have some employed coaching staff, and the club itself, in keeping with most competitive swimming clubs nationally and certainly locally, is run primarily by volunteer committee, chaired by a volunteer with a volunteer treasurer, a volunteer secretary and various members. Some larger clubs will have a slightly different background set up to ours. I'm aware of one, at least in the county, that employ a paid secretary for administrative duties, but that's the exception to the rule generally.
Brilliant. Great. Sounds very interesting. So what kind of soft skills or personality traits would serve someone well within your organisation?
I think first and foremost, you've got to be a people person. You've got to be happy dealing with groups of people. The soft skills that are broadest across the organisation are an awareness and a knowledge, probably quite a deep knowledge. But if you're going to look at employment within the sector of competitive swimming, it's a competitive sport. It's a very popular sport, albeit probably not in the top three when people think about what sports do you do as a child. Those who do participate in competitive swimming, certainly from pre-teen upwards, have to put in really quite some commitment. So people are generally committed to their sport. It's not a turn up once a week and then go home and forget about it. So being able to maintain that drive in people, that they stick to their commitments that they need for their goals, both within the pool and without. That's probably going to be the primary thing, along with a knowledge of the sport itself.
Sure. And do you have maybe a couple of examples of maybe routes into swimming? So would it be sort of starting as a hobby and then kind of developing from there, or how would you think the sort of one of the example of a good route would be?
So there are the most obvious one is young swimmers will come up through the Learn to Swim program that they are put into through their parents, enjoy swimming, hop into a junior squad of their local competitive swimming club, perhaps have one, maybe 2 half-hour or 45-minute sessions a week, and then that builds up as their skills develop, their stamina develops, their desire and drive for the sport, as well as they themselves grow. There are very well defined athlete development programs in I would say all clubs as they come up through. We have a number of masters swimmers. Now, master swimmers, anybody who's over 18, but generally and traditionally it tends to be much older swimmers, those who have perhaps dipped out of competitive swimming and come back into it, or have continued swimming throughout their lives. But certainly for West Norfolk, this year we have strived to develop our competitive masters squad, and we've now got a lot of former swimmers have been encouraged to come back in and are now enjoying getting back into the sport. And then in more recent years, there has been generally an explosion in the popularity of open water swimming, and people swimming, wild swimming, open water swimming, call it what you will. There are competitive elements of open water swimming. And again, within the county, certainly within our club, it's something that's gained in popularity. And all of these things serve to bring people back in. We've got one member this year who hadn't actually swum for a number of years, and has come back into the fold and the open water banner. Now that individual has in fact remained within swimming because she's quite a senior level official within swimming, so she's remained connected to swimming since she stopped, but now she's getting back into it and thoroughly enjoying herself again.
Brilliant, sounds fantastic. Great. So what do, for example, like the good and the challenging days look like within the organisation and doing what you do?
So for me as a volunteer chair, anything I do with the club is tacked on over and above the day job. So it tends to be evenings, a couple of meetings a week. Excuse me 1 second. I'm sorry. It tends to be a couple of evenings a week. If we're going to talk about perhaps employees within the organisation, we as a medium-sized club, small to medium-sized club really, we have employed coaches, one full-time permanent head coach, a deputy head coach who's employed on a part-time basis, and then others who work regular hours but on a casual contract basis. They'll perhaps work anything between 4 and 14, 16 hours a week. For them, the days can be long because you can have early morning training sessions. Our earliest sessions finish at 7:30 in the morning. So you can imagine they've got to be the coaches have got to be there, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to greet the swimmers, and when they arrive for their sessions at 5:30, and sometimes earlier than that even. And then at the other end of the day, sessions can go on for probably not for the same swimmers always, probably for other squads, but the coaches are coaching across the squads, and they can go on until 8:30, 9, and I think we've got one 9:30 session that finishes. We are beholden to our pool providers and the times that they will give us to, when I say give us, the times they will sell us to be able to use the pools. So for the coaches, it can be a very, very early start and quite a late finish, perhaps with quite some split in the day, so split shifts. That's one of the big challenges. The second is getting to know your swimmers, and you may have 2 squads in the water. You may have 18 swimmers in the water. Really, you need to know the strengths and weaknesses of all 18 of those. They're not only in their swimming techniques and their styles, but also their learning styles, and the way that they respond best to being coached. And then we add to that, everything I've spoken about so far is around training, but we are training to compete. So primarily at weekends, squads will ordinarily travel to other locations to compete. Now that could be, as I did last weekend, just up the road at Whittlesea. We went with a junior squad for a league gala, which started at 5 o'clock in the evening when we finished by 7:30. Alternatively, it could be a 2.5 day Friday afternoon through to Sunday evening gala in, for argument's sake, Sheffield. And the coaches need to be on form for that throughout. Clearly we pay for the accommodation and food and such like, but they are long days on top of your working week as well.
Yeah, sure. And what are some of the good aspects, so some of the positives of being a coach, do you think?
Seeing the development of the people that you have in the water, the young people you have in the water. I've got a wife who's a coach. I've got a son who is a coach, and they come back from their coaching sessions often buzzing because of the individual successes that they've seen in the water during training sessions, whereas somebody who's been perhaps struggling with a concept or with a new skill or developing a skill for some time has finally got it, and they're away and they can now crack on, or their squad have just responded really well to them during the course of the session. swimming is very much an all-round sport. It sounds at first listen or looks at first glance to be an individual sport, because clearly, and I'm not the best example, I'll grant you, but if I'm in the water, I'm swimming and it's down to me. But actually, it's very much a team and a community sport where people root for each other and really pull each other along. And so for the coaches to see and be able to develop that and see those social non-pool based skills develop within their squads is massively rewarding.
Yeah, I can imagine. Great.
And then, sorry, and what I should mention, of course, is to then see some individuals or your team, but to see individuals among your team to go on and have fantastic success, either at a county level, a regional level, a national level, and in some instances at an international level. There are returns on your efforts as a coach that come back in spades.
Yeah, of course. Sure. Sounds great. Okay, and what experience or research could a young person do in order to help them sort of prepare for a career in your field?
Okay, so realistically, I think there are two most obvious routes. One would be swim teaching and one would be swim coaching. Teaching being, as it says, so you're then dealing with non-swimmers, and coaching is developing competitive swimmers. For both, I think it's probably true to say that you need to have an interest in the sport, and to be somebody who has can at least hold their own in the water. There is then the Institute of Swimming, the IOS, who provide level 1, level 2, level 3 courses that are nationally recognised. And there are other providers, but they are the primary one, the Swim England route, Swim England being the governing body for English swimming, certainly. The level 1 coaches course, level 1 teachers course are assistant coach and assistant teachers roles. And then when you then move through to level 2, that's when on completion you remove the assistant title. Those courses now post-COVID are delivered on a hybrid basis. So there are pre-reads, there are Teams sessions or Zoom sessions, and then there are practical sessions. Whereas previously they would have been delivered wholly in person, face to face. So to do an assistant coach's course, you'd have been away for 3 days. To do a coach's course, I think it was at least a week. Now you probably only need to go away for 2 sessions, and they could both be on the same day, wherever that's held. So there's a lot more flexibility in that now. And the iOS website has all the information that's necessary on how you would get into and sign up for what the prerequisites are for those courses.
Oh, brilliant. Fantastic. Great. Okay, and one last question. So what piece of career advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, that's a difficult one. You know what, I've said that my role as chair is a voluntary one. I think as an older fella now, if I look back and spoke to my younger self, I would say just go for it, whatever your want is. If you don't ask, you don't get, and go along with a glass half full mindset rather than a glass half empty. So if you get the opportunity to do something, give it a crack. I've learned that we regret the things we don't do far more than we regret the things we do. So I think that's where I'd go.
Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic. That's some great advice. Okay, great. I think that's everything for me. So obviously, thanks again, Simon, for having a chat with me this morning. It's been hugely valuable.